She's up. Okay, well, what we're doing here is this is our planetary assembly. I guess you would call them, thinking of a good word here, is your powertrain, planetary powertrain, gear train, whole damn thing. This is your output shaft way up here. And I've got it sitting on a wooden block here, which really didn't work out for me, what I wanted to do with this. But we have to, in this step, which I've already done this step, but I'm going to explain to you and show you what I did. You have to check your clearance in this thing, which you've got, let me count, see real quick. You've got, select your snap rings. We know what those are by now, hopefully. And then you have a, let's see, you got number 3, let's see, number 4, 4, 5. Where's number 6 at? 4, 5, 7, 8. You got number 4, 5, 7, and 8 thrust washers in here. So they're in this. This is the exploded diagram right here of everything that's in that small little section. So I really didn't want to take this thing apart because it was working okay. And so, you know, call it lazy, call it whatever you want to do, but what you want to do is you want to take a measurement on this to see if you've got some worn out thrust washers in here. And if you find that your measurement is too loose, then you got to take it apart. So as it turns out, I think we're okay. Our range, again, like I said, the ranges are pretty loose on this stuff from the factory. Your range is between 5 thousandths to 51 thousandths clearance. So what I did was came in here, and normally you're supposed to, let me manipulate this camera here again. Sorry. You're supposed to normally let this whole assembly sit on a thin piece of wood, and I did not have one that thin, so oops. But what you're going to do with this is your clearance measurement in the camera, yeah, is right here. So normally if I had a small enough piece of wood, this whole assembly right here would droop down. It's been a long day, I'm sorry. Droop down and you get your clearance automatically. But in this case, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're just going to pick up on this, and you can audibly feel a clunk and you can see it move. See that? So what you do is you take your set of feeler gauges and you find the feeler gauge and go in here, just barely go in snug where you picking up on it and almost lifting it off the block. And a 20 thousandths feeler gauge will just barely go in there. It's very tight. So we got about 20 thousandths clearance. That is great. So I'm not taking it apart. Like I said, we'll find out down the road if this bites me in the ass, but I'm not taking all that apart. If I don't have to, if nothing indicates that it's worn and all this looks good, so I'm not taking it apart. You can take it apart if you want to. You know, if you want to do a more thorough job than I'm doing, I suggest you definitely do take it apart and check everything. But this transmission, aside from the, like I've said this already, but aside from the burned up clutches in one of the clutch packs, you know, it really doesn't look like it has hardly any wear on it. The bushings all look good and everything. Any place that there's any kind of wear that would be on it, it just doesn't show any. So I'm confident that it's going to work fine like this. So I'm going to put this, I've wiped it down, I'm going to put it on the table and call it good. So I'm deciding what I want to do next. We've got to do a couple things, but one thing is, before I start sticking this back together, I'm considering going ahead and cleaning up my servos. I've got them bagged down here, bagged and tagged. So I don't know. I may do that, I may not. I've got them here, and we got another one here. Where is it? I gotta do some cleaning, so I may go ahead and do these one at a time. These rings, things don't have any, well, take that back, that one does right there. No it doesn't, no it doesn't. I'm talking to myself, yes it does. I'm talking to myself. I'm looking to see if these things have any rubber wash seals in them, and this one absolutely does. So I've got to do this all at one time, or I'll get out of sync here. So we'll start on this. I think we're going to start on this tomorrow because I'm out of carb cleaner and I need to get some before I tackle this, because I'm going to take it out of the old bag, clean it, put the seal in it, put it in the new bag right away. Why did I not mark this? Well, they're different sizes, they're going to get mixed up, but just don't mix up the springs or anything in them. Yeah, and then you can see I've got another stuff down here that needs to be cleaned, so I'll be doing that. So, like I said, we're going to need to go through and look at this oil pump. It seemed to have good hydraulic pressure, but I need to split that thing apart and look at it, and then we'll start probably sticking this thing back together at that point. I don't know if I'm just going to try to go ahead and clean everything first or not, but I'll make that decision and then I'll clue you into that decision, and well, I'll be glad about it. But we'll find out as we go along. See you then. Thanks for watching. Later. You ready to start putting this pig back together? Let's do it, man. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the output shaft support back on, and that's this guy here, and it goes right here. You've got 4 bolts to hold it on. They're staggered, so this can only fit in one particular direction. So it goes on like that. Bolts line up. Now there's supposed to be a special tool you use on this. I don't have the special tool, so what we're going to do is you need to make sure when you put this back in that it's lined up, because if you look down in these holes right here where the bolts go, this thing can rotate, so you don't want to get it off index if you can help it. So just do the best you can with it. So you may want to just put one bolt in first and snug it and go from there. These things go, they're 1/2 inch bolts. They tighten to 150 inch-pounds of torque. I have an inch-pound torque wrench right here. So that's what you do. Just do it in an alternating fashion. I'm going to use a little bit of blue Loctite on mine just to make sure they don't back out. Height. Hey y'all! Okay, we got our output shaft support bolted down and torqued. So next thing we're going to do, we're just trying to do this in the reverse order of how we took it apart. So if you watched the video originally, this series, you remember that I said on this rear overrunning clutch, I said keeper spring roller, keeper spring roller. As a matter of fact, I went back and watched my own video just to make sure that's what I said, and yes, that is what I said. So keeper spring roller. So that's how you remember what order to put this stuff back in, because you don't need the rear overrunning clutch blowing up on you. So this thing is all clean and dry, so I want to go ahead and just put, where's my gloves? Oh no, where's my gloves? Let me get a fresh pair. I'm going to go ahead and put some transmission fluid in here. We don't want this dry, so we're going to just kind of dip things, put my finger in it and get it wet and insert the joke there. I'm gonna put on my exam gloves. Boy, I've went through these gloves. That's for sure. Alright, where's my... Okay, so dip finger in. Anything you think needs some lubrication by fluid on it, just go ahead and put it in. Okay, so I think that's gonna get that for now. So what did I say? I said keeper. These are the keepers. Then you put a spring in, so let's go ahead and do one of those, shall we? Keeper, spring, roller. Yeah. I might have to reach in, sorry, I think I'm gonna be in your way there. Okay, just place that in right there. And then you're gonna get a I made more of a mess than I planned on it. Put a roller in. Like that. So now you're going to repeat that for all of them. Alright, that's how you do it. So just repeat that all the way around here and get that done. Done. Well, as you're putting this thing together, what I ended up doing is I ended up putting in the hub. They call this the hub, the part with the splines on the inside of it right there. And then putting in the rollers and the springs, because I don't ever think that would ever fit with you putting the rollers and springs in first and then trying to put that in just by the design of it. Even though it came out that way, it doesn't go back that way, so you have to carefully just I took a little pick and carefully compress these springs against these keepers, a little piece of metal that comes up there to hold them in place, and then I was able to slide the rollers in. And this thing, it does some weird stuff as you're putting all this in. It kind of looks like it's not going to work, but you have to remember that when you put all the gear train back in, that something is going to spline into that, and so that it's going to keep it where it needs to be. So there's no place, no reason to worry about that coming loose, just as long as you've done your part here, that you've got them oriented correctly and seated and all that good stuff, and it is, so we shouldn't have any problems. Next up, we're going to deal with our low reverse servo. I've got all this cleaned up and we're getting ready to put it back in. This is the assembly here, not in necessarily the right order. I'm going to show you how it goes in order. This goes back here in the rearmost. When you're looking in a transmission like this, it's going to be in the rearmost spot back here. That's where low reverse band goes. So we're going to go ahead and assemble this and put it together. And here is the order in which this is assembled from bottom to top. This is from bottom to top. You've got the piston, you got a sealing. It's actually got, this one doesn't have a sealing ring, this one actually has a rubber sealing ring. You got a plug spring, you got a piston plug, you got a piston spring, you got a retainer, you got a snap ring. Snap ring's at the top. So looking at this assembly, this remained together. I did not take all this apart, this spring and this piston plug and all this snap ring. I didn't bother taking that apart, so I left it as is, just kind of give it a good cleaning. And then you've got a spring that goes over it like that, and you've got a spring retainer at the top of it, and then you've got a snap ring that holds it all in. So that's all going to go right there, and you want to lube this with transmission fluid before you put it in. Now what we've got to do before we do that is we've got to put a new seal on it. So we'll put this all back to the side temporarily. And this has got another one of these flared ring sealing seals on it, I call it. You can see that. And once again, the same application, type of application. It's got the piston. The piston is going to sit down in like this, and then you're going to have it. See how it flares out at the bottom. So you're going to pick the new one out of your kit, and so you look at this seal, and it's got a flat side on the top, and then at the bottom it's got more of a open type of a design, and then you can see the lip of it. The lip flares out, so when you put it in the transmission, it's going to go with the flare side down. So please remember that. So I'm going to go ahead and just, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pick, I'm going to pick this old one off carefully without scratching the piston, and probably give it another quick cleaning in there and put the new one on, lube it, put this all together. Now, I don't quite remember, one of these I had to use my C-clamp to get this compressed enough to get that snap ring off, so I'm assuming that I'll have to do the same thing to get the snap ring on. So let's do that now, guys. Okay then, just put the new seal on, flared side down, and just carefully work this piston down into the bottom till it stops down in there. And then next thing you're going to do, you're going to put your piston spring in over it. You notice this has been cleaned and it's been painted purple from the factory, whatever reason that was. So put that in. You're going to put your piston retainer in, and you can see, you could if I pointed at it, you can kind of notice that you got a ways to go before you can put that C-clamp in. So instead of trying to just push that down, I'm going to go C-clip. If I said C-clamp, I meant C-clip. I'm just going to reverse what I did the first time. Like I said, I'm just going to take my C-clamp and take a large socket and just put that, push that on down so that I don't have to fight with trying to hold it and try to get the clamp in. But that's all you do to get this thing back together. And get that put together, we'll go from there. Okay, that one's in. So what I used was, I forgot I had put this over to the side. This is what I used the first time to take it out. I just put this here, and then I took the C-clamp and positioned the C-clamp appropriately. I think I had it actually like that around the bottom of that housing. And you don't have to go very far with that piston retainer. It ends up just dropping just below, just lower than this groove that this snap ring goes in. So don't go cranking on it thinking that it's going to go further. It does not. So otherwise you risk bending the piston retainer or doing something bad to the bore of that piston bore in there. So just barely get it below where you can get this thing slid around and snapped in. So next up, we get to do the kick down servo right there. So let's do that now. Kick down servo. This is the assembly. So let's look at our diagram in the book. Okay, at the top you're going to have facing, well, let's start at the other end. Actually, that's the order we need to go in. At the very bottom in here, you're going to have the piston, which is right here. You're going to have the piston rod, which is right there. You're going to have the inner spring, which is right there. You're going to have the outer spring, not used on a 904 slant 6 application, but this is a V8, so there's the outer spring. There's the piston rod guide right there with the seal ring on it. That's that. And then you have a snap ring. That is the order that you go in from bottom to top. Snap ring will be at the very end up here, just like that one. So the thing to check on these is twofold. You want to check, these are metal, I guess cast iron sealing rings on these instead of like the other ones had the neoprene rubber, but these are steel. They're almost like piston rings. And they're like piston rings in that they're a little bit larger than the diameter of the piston that they're in. You can see they kind of stick out. So you want to just take a look at these things on the edges of them and make sure that they're not scratched and grooved and galled up. The kit has new ones in it. but I know you can't see this very well because this camera sucks so bad it won't show close-ups to save its life, but I can see, looking at this, I can see that they look fine. And also you want to look at your bore in here, make sure it's not scored up, and this one looks fine, so I'm not replacing any sealing rings or anything like that. I'm going to lube this with transmission fluid again from our container over there and go at it. So you do as you feel comfortable with. If you want to replace the sealing rings, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not going to, because these are okay, and that'll give me some spare parts for a later rebuild if I have to do one in another one. Now looking at that one real close right there, it had some, like, it's kind of worn the coating off of it, but the actual ring itself, I can still see it's got machine grooves around it, like going that way, so it looks fine. So let's put it all together in that order. Don't screw the order up. And also remember what the book says: if you have a slant 6, you should not have this large outer ring, so don't stress out if that's the case. Let's put it together. Done. Now we need to put in our pivots, our pins, and our linkages for these two items. And let me tell you now, I was going to go ahead and order and install I guess it would be a higher ratio kickdown band lever for this, which basically transmits the action of this servo to the band. I think the one that's in it now is a 3.2 or a 3.0 ratio, and you can get a 4.0 and you get a 5.0. The higher the ratio, the more leverage on the band to make it apply quicker and more firmly. But doing some research, it's again, it's like one of these other things you see here and there that, you know, it sounds good at the beginning, but in the end it's not really what you need in an application like this. And we're just going to stay with stock, because those say that they can cause problems with shift flare, which means it's more or less it's in between gears when it goes from second to third, and I don't want to deal with that. So we're just going to stick with the stock ratio. That's your option to change it if you want to, but I'm not going to. So let's get on with those pins. Here we have the low reverse band lever, and this fits in here like that, and it's got a pin that retains it. If you look through the disassembly videos, I hope you did, you saw how that comes out. It just slides out, and there's not much to do to this thing. Just, you know, if it's really nasty, you can clean it up, and I'm just going to wipe it down. It looks okay. I'm going to clean this pivot pin. It's not rusted or anything, but it's got a O-ring on it, just simply to keep fluid from going past it, I'm assuming. So you'll need to get your appropriate O-ring out of there and change that out. Try not to scratch it when you take it out, and then just clean it, and then put just a little coat of new fluid on it. Put all that back in. We'll adjust that band later.